Hi everybody, I'm Lucas Barsiskis, one of the artistic directors of this edition of the Biennale, together with Anton Vidokle and Hallie Ayres. It's very nice to see you here. I hope you already had a chance to walk through the exhibition upstairs. If not, you are very, very welcome to do it. And today we're entering the second day of the public events for the biennial. And just a short information that after this talk, we will have a second roundtable with participating artists. So you're very welcome to stay and listen to the artists who have their works exhibited upstairs. And on Saturday we will have the opening of the film program that will be happening throughout the period of the biennial in the Seoul Art Cinema, which is 10 minutes from here. You're also very welcome to join. And one more announcement that parallelly we keep having performances at SAPI, which is another place you could easily find the locations. So that being said, we're very happy to have the second talk today by Lorraine Littet. And first of all, probably important to mention that we're extremely happy to present Georgiana Houghton's drawings here at the exhibition of the biennial, which we really dreamt of doing, and we're super excited when the opportunity and our wish to do it was facilitated. And so in that connection, we have the talk by Lorraine Littet, who is a president of the Victorian Spiritualist Union in Melbourne, which houses much of Georgiana Houghton's work. And today, Lorraine will expand upon the development of Houghton's mediumship and her unique relationship with the spirit world that enabled her to produce these drawings and paintings we present upstairs. And Lorraine has a 50-year background in nursing and medical administration. Her journey into spiritualism began in 1976 when she joined Victorian Spiritualist Union while seeking spiritual understanding of the afterlife. And from that very moment, she entered the Victorian Spiritualist Union chapel. She was captivated by the artwork displayed there, which sparked a lifelong passion for spirit-inspired art. And as an active medium and teacher, Lorraine is committed to guiding Victorian Spiritualist Union's members and the public on their spiritual journeys. She actually holds a special role as a custodian of the 35 Georgiana Houghton spirit paintings housed by the Union, ensuring their preservation through specialized restoration works when needed. And she also elaborates on publications, including a few publications of Georgiana Houghton, and continues to research and educate herself about Georgiana's life and work. And so we are very thankful for Lorraine accepting our invitation to speak here with us today. So please welcome Lorraine.
Thank you very much, Lucas, for that very beautiful introduction. And I'd also like to thank especially Anton Vidokle for contacting the Victorian Spiritualist Union and giving us the opportunity to be part of this wonderful 13th biennial exhibition. And as Anton said in his introductory letter, what a better subject matter than your Séance, Journey of the Technology of the Spirit. So we're very excited to be included. And I'd also like to thank all of the other wonderful team members here at the Museum of Art, including Soim Lee, Jin Kwon, Hanu Cho, and the curators, Lucas and Hallie as well. So we're especially thrilled to be part of it. And I thank you everyone for coming along today to learn more about Georgiana and her work. And it really is my honour to represent Georgiana as I talk about her this afternoon, because this is a wonderful opportunity to give her expression that she didn't receive an opportunity to do in her own lifetime. as Lucas said, we do hold 35 of the 155 known Georgiana Horton paintings, and it's a very special honour for us. I'm also part of an organisation called Spirit Australia, and as a board member there, we are looking after, just as the VSU does, education in the spiritual understanding and how that works. And I'm particularly interested in your endeavours to try and understand the science side of how this can possibly work, and that the spirit world is really part of our world as well. So we're also working with others as seeking to become artists just like Georgiana. I'm not an artist myself, but I am deeply committed to this spiritual world and its influence on creative expression. It is my pleasure to be able to share my understanding of this connection between our human experience and the unseen world of spirit. And I'd like together to explore how Georgiana's art acted as a bridge between the spirit world and the physical world. Georgiana Horton was a true pioneer. She challenged traditional views of what art is, where it comes from, and why it is created. She was ahead of her time in both how she worked and what she produced. She encouraged other artists to connect more deliberately with spirit, to bring beauty, insight, and evidence of a greater reality into our world. Those of you who are artists, I know, already value fresh ideas and new perspectives. Like Georgiana and her unseen spirit helpers, today I hope to inspire you to reflect on your own creative processes. And I wonder if you're curious about this. Have you ever questioned where your inspiration comes from? And do you wonder if perhaps you're already connecting with the unseen world? I'd like to talk about someone who was doing just that. Georgiana was born in the Canary Islands in 1814, and she moved with her family back to London as a child. We cannot be certain, but it is thought she was schooled in Paris and also trained there as an artist. Her work for the next 2 decades was mostly with flowers, landscapes and portraiture, as most other females engaging in art at that time. Sadly, she gave up her art after the death of her sister Zilla, because, in her words, she'd lost the heart for it. In 1859, at the age of 45, Georgiana heard of the possibility, also in her words, of communion with the spirits of those who had passed away. She attended a séance and was very moved to be given evidence of communication with her sister Zilla and brother Cecil. Georgiana then decided to train as a medium, and she became an active member of the spiritualist movement. Spiritualism, for those of you who may not know, teaches that after our bodies die, the spirits of people who have died, together with other spiritual beings, can communicate with people who are living. Like almost everyone in Europe at that time, Georgiana and her family followed a Christian faith. In her 1872 book, Evenings at Home in Spiritual Séance, she wrote, Spiritualism is the crown to all previous knowledge, and she believed it to simply be an extension of traditional Christian teachings, and it was a gift from God. Georgiana attended seances and received many messages from her loved ones and guides. She was also told by Spirit to begin sitting at home herself. So Georgiana sat with her mother on Sunday evenings at a small table, quietly speaking of spiritual things, and waited patiently. After about 3 months, some movements of the table furniture began to happen. And then communications from the spirit world started to take place. And this was how people communicated with the spirit world in those days. Her mediumship developed quickly. I feel that this was because she was a devout believer and a prayerful person with a deep love of God and the spirit realm. Georgiana had already built a relationship with the spirits, and she saw these interactions as sacred. Her first spirit communications were with her sister Zilla and her brother Cecil, then other family members and friends. These Sunday evening seances continued for most of her life, and through these sittings her mediumship continued to become stronger and clearer. Georgiana first witnessed spirit art at a visit to a Mrs. Wilkinson in July 1861. The guiding spirit for Mrs. Wilkinson was her son, who had passed away at only 13 years of age. So, what exactly is trance art? Trance art is created when an artist enters an altered state of consciousness, usually through meditation, deep focus, or a spiritual practice. This state brings about an energy change in the physical body to a lighter vibration, where the mental awareness shifts from the physical to that of the life force, or our spirit aspect of our being. In this state, the spirit world can draw closer to us. If the living artist invites and allows the spirit artist, then spirit can guide the creative process. The artist becomes an instrument, a vessel through which spirits can communicate visually and physically. Perhaps some artists do this quite unknowingly. This isn't a technique that is only found in Western art. It's seen across many spiritual traditions, from the Native American vision quest to the trance rituals practiced by shamans all over the world. So to be clear, trance art is not about the artist's personal expression. It's about receiving and translating spiritual messages through the medium of art. And I'll read the words of Georgiana. I must explain that in the execution of the drawings my hand has been entirely guided by spirits, no idea being formed in my own mind as to what was going to be produced, nor did I know when a stroke was commenced whether it would be carried upwards or downwards. So in Georgiana's case, she would enter a trance-like state, often starting with her eyes closed, and let the spirit guides dictate the strokes of her brush. There was no pre-planned design. She trusted that the spirit artist would move her hands, creating the patterns, symbols, and art forms that needed to be seen. Georgiana's art was a direct result of Spirit's guidance. As you can imagine, the art that emerges from trance is not like anything you'd expect to see in a traditional art gallery. It's not about form or technique as we know it. It's about connection. Connection to the energy that transcends our physical world and taps into something much deeper and more mysterious. One day during a séance, Georgiana asked her deceased sister Zilla to assist her, but Zilla said she was unable to do this. Georgiana then asked her brother Cecil if he could assist with her artwork, who also said he couldn't, but instead he brought along a spirit who called himself Lenny. Lenny had been known as Angelo when he was alive in a physical body. Angelo was an artist in human life, and he was also deaf and dumb. But of course, in spirit, that physical aspect was gone. Georgiana first began working with Lenny's guidance using a pencil and a planchette. Georgiana held the planchette and pencil, and Lenny began to draw, in her words, curious curves. On the planchette, you'll notice the two small 360-degree rotating wheels at the base of the planchette, stabilising the platform, with the pencil being the third point of the triangle. The human medium makes the choice to move their awareness into a state of altered consciousness or trance, and this allows the spirit artist to use their energy to move the medium's hand. Eventually, Lenny asked Georgiana to stop using the planchette and pencil and to start working freehand, using her paints. For their first collaboration, Georgiana asked for a flower, which was drawn. She then asked Lenny for details about the flower. Lenny explained it was called Siciliana, one of the flowers of Spirit Land. The next night he drew a fruit and wrote on the artwork the word Siciliana again, meaning that this was the fruit of her brother Cecil's flower. Lenny said, at birth, every spirit is given their flower and fruit. Lenny said that he would do her sister Zilla's next, and this resulted in the painting Flower of Zilla Warren, which was done in August 1861. Together, Lenny and Georgiana had already painted his own flower and fruit, the flower and fruit of Henry Lenny, dated the 28th of August, 1861. This is now painting number 1 in the VSU collection. Lenny's drawings were signed Henry Lenny. In the early days, Lenny worked with Georgiana to paint spirit flowers of other family members. Here are some of these. The flower of William Harmon Butler. The flower of Warren Horton. The flower of Helen Butler. The flower of Samuel Warren. So we must remember that Georgiana's works were not just abstract or symbolic. They were channeled through her direct connection with Lenny and the spirit realm. She used her paintings to express the messages she received from spirits. She worked in a semi-trance state, allowing the spirit artist to guide her hand, her colours, and the composition of each piece. She used the term passively active, originating from the book Life of Madame Guyon, to describe her blending with the spirit artists. Her paintings were filled with vibrant colours, swirling forms, and intricate patterns, elements that were not common in the art world of her time. Each colour used had a spiritual meaning, and this was represented in the symbolic form of spirit flowers, spiritual crowns, monograms, and other swirls and constructs. This slide gives us the interpretation of some of her colours, as was written in her catalogue for her exhibition, which I'll speak about shortly. So, for example, orange chrome is gentleness, emerald green is self-control, and burnt sienna is clearness of judgment. So the colours describe the attributes of the person who the painting represented. Her works were not just innovative for their visual appeal, but also for their underlying spiritual message. So as people requested paintings to be done, the spirit world gave them the understanding of what their achievements from a spiritual aspect had been made in their lives. So her artwork was both a form of communication and a form of healing. As her mediumship developed further, spirits began to speak through her during séances. And then, as she was drawing, the spirit artist would converse with her. Georgiana noticed and described these conversations. To remember how perfectly natural it even seemed that in my own voice and with my own knowledge, I should be first someone and then myself, talking alternatively, discussing and arguing matters. And these quotes are taken from her book Evenings at Home in Spiritual Séance. Georgiana also writes that Lenny told me that I was only a machine, to which I demurred, and brought him to acknowledge that I had taught him about modern colours, and although he guided my hand in the use of them, but I could always leave off when I pleased. Of the words on the versos of the painting, how this came to be, Georgiana explains. I placed the drawing before me, and there, as far as possible, empty my mind of all thought, except I am uplifting my soul in prayer to God, that he will so imbue me with his spirit, that his messengers may enable me to understand the truths they have embodied in form and colour. After a time, the words gradually float into my mind, and then are written through my hand. Of course, for this I require to be quite undisturbed, and I must also be in a placid and peaceful place state, said nothing earthly may jar against the higher life. Georgiana was among the first known to create art through trance. By merging spiritualism and mediumship with art, she created a new way of experiencing our material, physical, three-dimensional world that we live in. Through her work, she invited the unseen to be seen, offering a glimpse into the spirit world. And she was not the only one. We know of several artists working with the spirit world amongst her spiritualist friends and acquaintances. By 1862, her drawings had become more widely known, and many people came to see Georgiana's work. In early 1863, she began to hold Wednesday afternoon receptions, as she called them, as the spirit world had suggested to her, so that people would come at a time convenient for Georgiana. Georgiana was also commissioned to paint the flowers and fruits of acquaintances and her friends. And she also became a teacher. She was surprised to find that she could somehow give her friends and pupils the energy to help them make a connection with a spirit artist. For some of her students, this beautiful shift of awareness into the semi-trance state to make a connection only took place in her presence and in her home. I believe that Georgiana was what we would call a physical medium, because she had that ability to help people connect in that way. Georgiana writes that she began to observe the different specialties of mediums with respect to symbolism, and to see that each appears to have some particular type of God's care as most appropriate either to their lives or their feelings. So by that she meant that depending on the nature of the artist, the living artist, so an artist from the spirit world who was in harmony with them would be attracted to work together. As the modern world continues to discover and recognise the previously dismissed work of women artists during the 19th century, it is interesting to realise that Hilma af Klint, the Swedish artist who was eventually exhibited at the Guggenheim in New York after so many decades of being hidden away, was born in 1862. You'll see some of her work here. So Hilma's birth is 1 year after 1861, the year Georgiana first began painting. Alongside Georgiana, another early trance spirit artist was Barbara Honeywood. Barbara was one of Georgiana's students, and some of Barbara's work can be seen at the Bethlehem Museum of the Mind in London. She began drawing in 1863, and we know that she was working with Georgiana by 1865. And at that time, they drew each other's flowers. Georgiana introduced Barbara to spiritualist circles, and she was inspired by Georgiana to work with colour. Some of her paintings also depicted fruits. As Georgiana's mediumship connection strengthened, She worked with many spirit artists as well as Lenny. Tiziano Vecellio was an Italian Renaissance painter. We don't know his birth date, but we do know he died on the 27th of August, 1576. He introduced himself to Georgiana and was the spirit artist of our painting number 7, The Eye of the Lord, dated the 22nd of September, 1862. This is the first of 3 paintings with that title, created by Georgiana and the spirit artists. The others were painted much later. Number 30 in our collection is dated September the 1st, 1870. And here we can see number 31, which is here at our exhibition, is dated October the 24th, 1870. Both artworks were guided by a band of archangels who worked with Georgiana. And the meanings written on the versos of the first one and the other 2 are quite different. The accompanying verso of number 31 reads, "A symbolised spirit drawing executed through the mediumship of Georgiana Horton, the sacred symbolist, whose hand has therein been guided." Another artist named Antonio Allegri also was known as Correggio. He came to work with Georgiana from the spirit world. Like Tiziano Vecellio, he was a Renaissance painter who was known to have lived. Allegri was born on the 30th of August, 1489, and died on the 15th of March, 1534. The Eye of God, created on the September the 25th, 1862, was signed by Antonio Allegri. I will now speak aloud an excerpt from the verso that accompanies this painting, The Eye of God. This is to represent the Eye of God in the 3 persons of the Trinity, the ever watchful eye looking down on man's most trifling acts, as well as his more important ones, in vivid yellow, looking upon us all. And I notice this is the first painting exhibited in the Georgiana collection upstairs. It is particularly striking, I always think. Georgiana began her spirit artwork during the mid-19th century, but the time of great change and experimentation in the world of art hadn't yet arrived. When she held her exhibition of 155 paintings, entitled Spirit Drawings in Watercolours, in 1871 at the New British Gallery in London, it was highly criticised and only 1 painting was sold. It was not until the late 1800s that traditional art forms were being challenged by movements like Impressionism and abstract expressionism. Her amazing artwork was ahead of the times, and Georgiana was doing something even more extraordinary. She was creating art directly inspired by spirits. She was one of the first artists to publicly claim that her paintings were inspired by messages from the spirit world and that the paintings were produced through her hand by the spirit artists. She was a pioneer and a trailblazer. Even though her work was not fully appreciated at the time, today I believe we can now see how her influence showed the way for other spiritual artists and mediums. Other mediums from various spiritual traditions have also channeled spirit through art. One example is the Australian Aboriginal practice of dot painting, which channels ancestral stories and spiritual knowledge onto canvas. The act of painting, in these cases, is not just a creative outlet, but a way of honouring and communicating with the unseen world. I realise that those of you who are artists are all deeply connected to the act of creation. Have you ever considered that your creative process might not always be limited to your own observations, thoughts, and feelings? What if there was something else, something unseen, that could inspire your art? Would you consider opening yourself to receiving inspiration from the spirit world? Maybe you've already experienced moments in your art where it felt like the creative ideas came from somewhere beyond your own mind. Do you think your work might deepen, mature, excite or provoke and inspire and touch people more if you allowed yourself to trust your intuitive process? Every one of you has the potential to tap into something greater, just as Georgiana Horton did. You may already be receiving inspiration from the spirit world and have not yet realised it. Art has always been a deeply personal journey and may already be a spiritual journey for some of you as well. One of the most important things I encourage you to do is to trust your own intuition in your creative process. Our inner voice is always there, but we don't always listen to it. It's the voice that tells you what colours to use, what patterns to explore, when to create, and how to create. Here are some ideas you can explore to help bring spirits in through your art if you wish to. First, allow some quiet time before you begin creating. Let go of the day and thoughts around you. Expect nothing. And just allow your mind to gently slow down step by step. For some people, you might have special music that brings a smooth change of awareness state. You might use a meditation or a prayer, or watch the sunlight on a lake, sit in nature with your back leaning against a large old tree, or go for a walk. When you feel time start to fade, when you feel that softness around you, then you are ready to begin. Ask and just start. Pick up whatever medium you are using and hold it towards the canvas. Have no plan, be childlike. Be curious and see what comes. I do encourage everyone to explore and include this possibility in your artwork. Push beyond what your mind knows and embrace the mystery of it all. Georgiana Horton allowed spirit artists to guide her, and you are no different. For me, the reality of the spirit world is a quiet truth I cannot deny or ignore. In my work as a minister at the VSU, every month I see new people whose worldview is profoundly changed by opening up to spirit. I teach trance and I communicate with spirit to bring messages of love from the other side. For decades, the presence of the spirit world has been too real and too constant for me to ever turn away. I have experienced life-changing evidence, and I have seen, heard and felt so much that I would be denying spirit if I didn't accept this truth. I just don't think it is real. I know it is real. I also know it's not just one or two special people who can do this. We all can. It's how we are made. We are all spirit beings having a human experience. We just have to make the time and space to allow it to come through. I would like to leave you with these thoughts. When connected to the spirits, art becomes both the expression of you and of something beyond you. Georgiana Horton's work is a bridge between the seen and the unseen. You are already expressing yourself through your art. Why stop there? Inspired trance is the doorway for connecting both worlds. The key to unlock this door is in your hands. Will you choose to open it? Your soul and the world of spirit is waiting. Your mind just has to allow it. I hope that I have opened your mind a little today in sharing some of Georgiana's journey. And I do thank you all for sharing your time with me. I wish you inspiration and I wish you joy. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Lorraine, thank you so much for this amazing talk and for, of course, for lending us the works in the first place, which is incredible, and for coming here as well. I just have a kind of a basic question. I'm very curious about Georgiana's artistic training. Like, for example, Hilma af Klint was a very highly trained artist who studied at the Art Academy in Stockholm and, you know, had a parallel career of making representational paintings and could have been a very successful conventional artist had she chosen to go in that direction. What about Georgiana? I know that her sister was a painter, and I've come across a mention that Georgiana also took some art lessons, but to what extent?
Well, we don't absolutely know, of course, but from my understanding and what I've read in her book, I don't think she had any training along the lines that Hilma did, that's for sure. I think she had very basic art training and, as she said, worked with the mainly flowers and portraits and landscapes. She hadn't done anything like that work before she started working with the spirit artists. She never had a career as such, which women didn't in those days, of course, and she never married. So she lived at home with her parents. She looked after her parents. She lived what they called a genteel existence. And I think, you know, she enjoyed the art, but she didn't do it on a professional level. And she wasn't trained in that way. That's to the best of my knowledge.
How did she support herself?
I think her family supported her. And I know when she had her exhibition, it almost sent her bankrupt because she paid for everything herself. She paid for the framing of all the paintings, and the 155 were in their exhibition. And if anyone is interested, I know at the State Library in Victoria can actually go onto the internet and look up that catalogue, and it will give you a listing of all of the paintings in her collection, all of the names of the paintings. And you can see a lot of the verso words as well, and also descriptions in Georgiana's works that were in the catalogue about the paintings.
You mentioned that the show was received in a kind of a very negative way. This is based on art criticism in the newspapers of the time?
It was, yes.
So what kind of reactions did her paintings elicit in the audience?
They thought she was mad. That probably says, basically that, they thought she was mad. She received no credit for it whatsoever. She was sort of, in Australian terms, chased out of town, so to speak, which was so sad. So when her paintings were exhibited at the Courtauld in London, and I went, it was like, well, finally she's getting the recognition she deserved back then, and that's one of the reasons, we're eager to let her paintings travel and be seen around the world, because we can give her the exposure that she didn't get, in her own time.
You mentioned that there are altogether around 150 paintings, and that in your collection there is about 35?
35.
Where are the rest of her?
Well, if you can find them, just let me know. The College of Psychic Studies in London, they have a folio with 7 of her paintings in them. And I know her great-great-grandniece has 2 of her paintings. And there's one in a private collection in Paris, and a private collection in London as well. But we don't know where any of the others are, so we're hoping one day they'll turn up in someone's attic. Who knows, but yeah.
Hi, thank you for your talk. It was really good to hear. I'm wondering if you guys, as an organisation, look into, obviously, Georgiana's work has been has performed a role in your organisation and community, but then it has a sort of slightly different role in the art world, perhaps. And I'm wondering if, as an organisation, you look at other indigenous. You presented some Australian Aboriginal works there, which actually, there's a similarity in terms of execution, which is quite interesting. But those similarities are quite universal in the sense, in terms of indigenous painting. I'm particularly thinking of in the Amazon, for instance, with Ashaninka or the Shapubu Konibo. They're really interesting in terms of Ikaro, because the idea of painting and singing and ritual and ayahuasca and all these things are the same. They're the same. Yeah. They're understood as the same thing. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on, and if your organisation and community looks at practices like that at all.
We certainly recognise them, and we respect them and acknowledge them. But as an organisation, we teach what we know. So we don't expand. We're a voluntary organisation. So as a group of volunteers, it takes a lot of work managing, the teaching and the service we do to people within our organisation. So unfortunately, we don't have the time or the knowledge. When I first started being involved with the Georgiana paintings, I had to learn a language really that I didn't know before, with the art world. And we want to be able to share her work as much as we can, but we haven't really had the opportunity to delve deeper into the aspects that you're talking about. Perhaps one day, when we have more resources and someone who comes along who would like to do that, we would eagerly follow down that path. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have one more question. With Hilma af Klint, there is now quite a huge controversy in Sweden. The president of her foundation, which is her descendant. I think he's like grandnephew or something
That's
like
right,
that.
yeah.
Recently made a statement in the press that he feels that he doesn't feel that it's appropriate the way her work has been circulating through sort of top world museums such as the Guggenheim or many others, and sort of presented as, you know, a kind of an incredibly valuable artwork in a kind of a rather elite circle of the art world. Yeah, that he feels that Hilma was creating this work for a completely different reason, and it requires a very different setting, that it needs to be, in a sense, taken out of the art circuit, yeah, and placed in what she kind of referred to as the temple, which is what all of these paintings are intended for to be shown to spiritual seekers, to be shown to followers of anthroposophy, which is what inspired a lot of her ideas, and basically not really that it shouldn't be circulating in a way that it does right now. How do you feel about this aspect of Georgiana's work?
It is an aspect I have considered very seriously, and we have been approached by other organisations, by other museums, and I always need to know the background of the nature of the exhibition that they're going to be included in. So I too believe that when we do present them outside of the church situation, then it needs to be with that great understanding of the spiritual aspect of them. And that's why I agreed that we could, you know, bring them here, because you were talking about the spirit, you know, in all the work that you're doing with this exhibition. And I do know about that as far as Hilma's works go. So I can understand that way of thinking, and perhaps I haven't been to the Guggenheim, so I don't know, but I know when they were at the Courtauld, they were represented very much with the spiritual aspect being identified. And we have been approached at times by those who perhaps have gone on an avenue which I would call more to do with the greater occult rather than the spiritual, because there is a distinction when we look into the occult. You know, there can be negative aspects as well, and I haven't engaged because I believe we're representing Georgiana, so I have to ask myself the question, would Georgiana want her work in that exhibition? And if I truly feel that that's not the case, well then we won't offer it. So I can agree with that, but at the same time, I think as long as we're giving out the understanding of the spiritual aspect of her work and where it comes from on that spiritual level, and now that those in your world of art are actually acknowledging that or investigating it at least, you know, coming open to it, then I feel that it's the right thing to do for us. But I suppose the commercial aspect can be a consideration, perhaps when they go to larger exhibitions and that sort of thing. You know, to put it bluntly, you know, who's going to make the profit out of it? And I think that's probably what they think at. And also preserving the work, because, you know, our works particularly, and Hilma's, you know, they're very old and they need a lot of care, and the paint that was used is far more fragile, I believe, than paint that would be used today. So to keep the works we have in condition that we can allow them to travel isn't expensive and time consuming and can only be done by those with a great deal of experience. And certainly when we were told they did need some conservation work, I, not understanding what that would entail, went to the it's called the Grimwade Centre in Melbourne, connected with Melbourne University. And they showed me how they would do the conservation work, because I thought, well, I don't want anyone there with a brush touching up her artwork. That's, you know, going to... But you probably understand how they work with... It's like a glue-like substance, and they come in with a fine needle from underneath the lines of the paint, and it helps it adhere together, and so it doesn't come apart. So I could accept that Georgiana would be happy about that. So we were happy to do that, but it takes a lot of serious consideration before we allow the work to travel. Thank you very much, everyone.